September 11th. Today work went the same exact way. I struggled in the morning and then after lunch I locked into the same strange rhythm. By the end of the day, me and Rondell got it so the tree was almost ready to go. We could move it back and forth with our hands and lean it way to the side when we jimmied it from underneath with a pick, but we still couldn't get it all the way out. A couple other guys came over and yanked on it too, jimmied with their picks, but nobody could totally pull it out. It's a stubborn one, my Gramps' friend said as we were loading up the truck. Roots are deep, huh? Me and Rondell both nodded. Sometimes roots are like that, very deep, much deeper than people can see. We nodded some more. Like life, he said. I know, I told him back, even though I wasn't sure exactly what he meant. He patted me and Rondell each on the shoulder and then got in the cab of the truck with my Gramps and they drove us back. We got paid and ate a big plate of chicken tacos, and then my grandma came back over and sat with us at the little table in our shed for a while. We went through the same things as we did the night before about how she was happy we'd come and could she fix us any leftover tamales or empanadas. But then all of a sudden she had mad tears running down her face. Your brother, she said, grabbing my hand. He was such a good boy. I looked back at her, my stomach flipping over inside my body, my head getting woozy like I was drunk even though I didn't have a sip of alcohol in forever. And I couldn't stop swallowing. I don't even know why, but I kept swallowing like every 2 seconds. She wiped her face, and I stood up and went to my bag again. I could feel my grandma and Rondell following me with their eyes. Such a good boy, my grandma said again. Who is, Rondell said. Miguel's brother, my grandma said. His name was Diego. What happened to him, Rondell said. My grandma didn't say anything, just cried even harder and touched Rondell on the arm. Then she put her face in her hands and said through her fingers, But it's going to be okay, mijo. I pray about you. She said it again before I spun around, shaking my head. It's not okay, I told her. She looked up at me with a surprised look on her face. It is, mijo. It was an accident. I know because I prayed about it. It's not okay, I said again. And I kept shaking my head back and forth and back and forth. It's not okay, Grandma. Your brother would want you to go on living your life. He loved you more than anyone. Just hearing her say that made a small tear push out of my right eye. I wiped it real quick, told her I loved him too. We all did, mijo. I stared at my grandma, wiping my face. Rondell kept his eyes on me, his mouth hung open. Then my grandma broke down even more, started sobbing. She ran her hands down her face and said in this crazy, crying grandma voice, I'm just so sorry for you, Miguel. I stared at the ground. She stood up. It's too much, she said, for a boy to take. I pray every night for you to be okay, but I don't know. She backed up toward the door, crying, and then she sort of waved at us and said, I'll come talk to you tomorrow. I can't right now. She left. It was just me and Rondell now, and he was staring at me, and I already knew his question, so I told him, What, Rondell? You want to know what happened to my brother, right? What was your grandma telling us, Mexico? He said. I tried to smile at him, but some tears came trickling out of my burning eyes. I just let them too, and nodded my head for a while. I looked Rondell right in his eyes and said, You want to know what happened, Rondell? He nodded at me. I killed him, man. Killed my own brother. He stared back at me like he didn't understand. That's what you wanted to hear about, right? Your brother you told me about? Yeah, man, I killed him. I said it at him again and again, and Rondell just sat there looking at me, stunned, his eyes bugged and his mouth hanging open. But I thought you and him was going to meet up. I lied, Rondell, I shouted. I've been lying to you this whole time. I can't never see my brother again for the rest of my life because I killed him. I realized I was crying now for real, tears streaming down my cheeks and my mouth, and I didn't even try to stop them. Everything was coming out of me at once, climbing through my throat and into my mouth and shooting out from behind my eyes. Somehow it was a relief just to say it over and over. I killed my own brother, Rondell. My own brother. Dead, man, because of me. It was the first time I'd ever said it out loud. My brother's dead, I told him again, because I killed him. Rondell sat there quiet for a few minutes, just looking at me, bugging. Then he cleared his throat and raised his head up and asked me how, and I stared right back at him, crying and smiling at the same time. He didn't look away, asked me again even. I wiped my eyes and nose in my sweatshirt and thought about that for a while, what he wanted to know. Then I decided to say it to him. The truth. Back in Stockton at our apartment after school, 6 months and 14 days ago. I'm sitting in the living room eating a piece of Mom's homemade bread with butter and sugar when Diego comes strutting through the front door. The TV's on some show I used to like. Diego tosses his backpack on the couch, points at me, and goes in the kitchen to make his own piece of bread. I watch him go through the door. He comes out a minute later with 3 pieces on a paper towel and sits in Pop's old chair. Yo, Gully, he says, picking up his first bread. Let me get the remote. Nah, man, I'm trying to watch this, I tell him. He pauses his bread before It gets to his mouth. "Gully," he says. I look up at him, almost smiling, but not yet. "What, man? Let me get the remote." "I can't do it," I say. He nods and sets down his bread, stands up. "Gully," he says. "What? I gotta make you give it up?" I start laughing and toss the remote at him. It bangs off his chest and falls to the floor. When it hits, one of the batteries flies out and we both watch it roll under the couch. Diego looks up at me, laughing a little too now. And the reason we're laughing is because we always mess around like this after school. It's like our ritual. It's how we have fun sometimes. He charges, jumps on me, gets me in a tight headlock. My sugar bread goes flying on the rug, butter side down. And Diego shouts through his laughter, "You gonna disrespect your big bro like that, huh, Gully? That's what's up?" "Come on, D," I said. "Let me go, man. Say mercy, bitch." I laugh without sound, shout, "Hell nah." I reach up, trying to pry his hands away from my head, one finger at a time. "Say mercy. Hell nah. Say mercy. Hell nah." I use all my strength, and for the first time, I actually pry his hands off me and get myself free. I stand up and look at him. He looks back at me. I feel stronger all of a sudden, almost as strong as Diego. It's the first time I've ever felt as strong as Diego in my whole life. We both look at each other, smiling. I feel incredible. "Oh, I see what's up, Gully," he says. "You think you're some kind of badass now." "Better watch it, D," I tell him. "One day I'm going to mess around and make you say mercy." We both crack up a little, and he says, "Too bad one day ain't today, little bro." He charges again, dives toward the sofa at me, but I sidestep him, hop over the cushions, and land on the other side on my back with a thud. We both get up and look at each other. Him on one side of the couch, me on the other. Still just playing, still just having fun like every other day. And I'll never forget the look on his face, not for the rest of my life. It's the look I've dreamed about every night since, and will dream about every tomorrow after. My big bro, laughing, happy, his hair cut short and mad cool, sideburns long and thin and perfectly trimmed. His face, the face all the girls at our school die over. His clothes, the clothes all the dudes at our school try to copy on the DL. My big bro, Diego, him staring at me, breathing a little hard from us messing around, alive, about to chase me one last time. Every dream I think back to this moment, I try to make it so I just give myself up, let him tackle me, tell him mercy, tell him he's right how one day ain't today. But I don't give up, because at the time I'm feeling so strong. I just pried him off me with my bare hands, and anyways, we're just messing around like any other day. He races around the couch and I dart in the kitchen, scoop the steak knife off the table he just used to butter his bread. I turn around and try to tell him, "Back off, yo," but I can't quite get the whole thing out because I trip going backwards and fall on my back against the sink, my head smacking on the door of the cupboard. Diego flips the kitchen table the rest of the way over, laughing, and dives on me, tackles me like any other day, but this time he doesn't get me in a headlock, and this time he doesn't tell me to say mercy, and this time he just has his eyes on mine and smile that's fading from his face, draining like water from a bathtub, like sand through your fingers at the beach. This time his eyes get mad big and wide and scared, and they drift to the side, emptying out. This time our messing around isn't just messing around, because I trip and fall with the knife and my head bangs the cupboard door, and when he goes to tackle me, there's a knife and he falls on it and it goes in him. The knife, it goes in him. I feel this happen. I look in his face and know something forever has happened and try to push him off, but he's stuck on me and I have to shove him with all my new strength, and finally he rolls over onto his back and I stare at him, breathing hard, the knife sticking out of his chest, out of his heart. The Indian doctor will later tell my mom's in the waiting room of the hospital, and after she hears those words, she will go down on her knees, holding on to the door's arm and screaming, and everybody looking at her. At first, my head is a blur because I can't catch my breath, but then it gets clear. The knife I was holding, it pierced Diego's heart and killed him dead. I stabbed my big brother in the heart, my Diego, my family, my entire life. I scream like a little girl, his blood pouring out of him like a water fountain and onto the kitchen tile, and I'm scooping it up, trying to push it back in him, but I can't, and I'm looking down at my shirt at all his blood on me too, and on my arms and my face and my pants, in my hands. I lean over him and scream and scream and scream. And then my face goes all normal for a sec, and it seems like I'm thinking, but I'm just trying to realize this is real and my brother has a knife in him. And then I scream and pick up his face in my hands and look in his eyes, big and empty and drained. I lay his head back down soft even though he's dead. I stand up, make Diego's head go straight, and stare at the knife in his chest and scream again. But this time no sound comes out, like I'm mute. But then when I scream a second time, there's sound again. I run in the living room and look at the couch and the TV and the bread on the rug. I grab the remote and think how to put it back together, grab the battery from under the couch, push it back in, snap on the cover. I set the remote on the table by the couch and run back in the kitchen and kneel next to my brother, who still has a knife in his heart and spit bubbling from his mouth and eyes that are drained. I grab his face again and yell at him. I don't even know what words, but he doesn't hear me. I yell and yell and yell, not even real words, and then start telling him his name, Diego, 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 right in his ear, but he doesn't hear me. And then the sirens are outside, and then the cops and firemen are coming in the kitchen and saying things I can't understand and spreading out and kneeling by Diego. And then I'm with one of them in the living room next to the overturned bread, and he's holding up my chin, so I'll look at him in the eye and tell him my name and say what happened, but I can't understand him. He's saying his questions over and over and over, and I'm crying. And then I'm in the front of the squad car. I'm looking in the back. It's empty. I'm looking at the cop who's shaking his head, talking in his radio, and I'm wishing he would put me in the back because I know that's where I'm supposed to be, not in the front, in the back, how it always is on TV and in the movies and on the show I used to watch after school. And then I'm in the police station and my mom's is rushing in and I'm standing up and shouting her name, Mom. And we're making eye contact and then she's looking away and her face is scrunching up and she's looking at the cop and turning away from him too and leaving me at the station in the cell. And one of the cops is running after her, yelling for her to hold on. Mrs. Castaneda, Mrs. Castaneda, Mrs. Castaneda. And then I'm in front of the judge who's telling me my sentence. And then I'm here in this horse shed in Fresno where my whole body is sore and trembling and everything smells like hay and my chest is going in and out and in and out faster than is even possible. And I'm crying tears and telling Rondell about killing my own brother and he's staring back at me with his mouth open.